Welcome to Green Carpet Interviews. Let's get into the show.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Green Carpet Interviews. This is the show where we love each other and we make sure that we're all learning about how to be sustainable. You know, that could include being vegan, that could include, just a lot of stuff, right?
You cannot be a preacher for sure.
A preacher.
Yeah, preachers don't stall.
You know,
Man, they just
what it
bang
is
on,
is
man.
I'm pausing. It's for pausing for dramatic effect.
Oh,
That's what's
okay.
going on here.
Yeah, yeah.
So, anyways, today's guest is somebody that you've been looking forward to talking to for. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah,
have
for
been too,
sure.
but you for sure has been
Yeah,
looking forward
yeah.
to talking to. It's Dr. Faraz Harsini, and he's got a lot of, I think this is going to be a good one.
I think one of the reasons why I've been so excited also, I mean, for me, this young man is an immigrant, well-read, well-rounded, and of course, I love music, and he's so accomplished. He knows so many instruments, and he does so much good in the world. It's just wonderful just to bring him onto the podcast and to have people actually meet him in our community. I'm excited. In fact, I know a couple of folks that said, it'll be actually nice to actually have him physically come to our community to actually talk to some of our folks. And I thought, wow, that would be so amazing. Yeah, it's so excited to actually bring him on. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it's been a few months, right?
Yeah, it's been a few months. There are a couple of vegan, celebrities or vegan YouTube celebrities that I follow as well. Including Cosmic Skeptic. He's amazing. He's done so much work, but somehow he stopped being vegan. And that really caused a lot of riff in the vegan community because he's such a loud voice and he's such an influence on so many people.
Right.
And so that was really hard for a lot of people to take. I think he had his own reasons and he tried to express that, but it's always still difficult, But and then so that's of course one of the response videos was Dr. Harsini's video. So I wanted to make sure, that, wow, I've got to meet this person because he may connect to Dr. Harsini.
Yeah.
And it's been probably about 3 months now.
Yeah, it's hard to nail this guy down. He's very busy. Very busy.
It's awesome.
And so we're excited and we're glad we have him here. So just for the people at home, I'll give you a little bit of him. So he's a doctor, obviously. He's also the CEO and founder of Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, which is a nonprofit, and it's doing a lot of good work in the world. He's a biomedical scientist,
Right.
He graduated from the University of Tehran. And he's a very smart guy, and we're going to learn a lot today, I think. So without further ado, let's just, let's bring the man of the hour in, why not?
Awesome.
So here's Dr. Harsini. Hello.
Hey.
Dr. Faraz Harsini. How are you?
Very good. Awesome. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited.
Thank you for being here.
We're really excited. I'm particularly excited because I've been like so following you and waiting with bated breath to have you just come teach us. It's really fantastic.
Yeah,
fantastic. It's funny because I think for me too, as an immigrant, I'm really I just feel so elated to know that somebody who is, you know, an immigrant like me, but so immensely accomplished and so young as well, you know. So yeah, I am, I'm really excited to get to meet you for sure.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
So I guess we can start at the beginning. So where did your vegan journey begin?
I think I always really liked animals. I even did some activities that were related to, ironically, animal rights before even going vegan, such as trying to save fish, you know, being against hunting and things like that, and even advocating for them. Until at some point, one of my friends told me, Faraz, you can't say you love animals and eat them too, which made me really uncomfortable at the time. I didn't like to hear that. I was like, ouch, you know, how dare you judging me?
Yeah.
But that was basically the start for me. A couple of months later after that, I realized that she was right. I went vegetarian, and only because I just didn't know anything about dairy and egg. And my friend was vegetarian herself, so she never pushed me further. So it had to all organically come to me. And so I became vegetarian. I even remember saying that there are people who are so extreme, they don't even eat egg and dairy. Here I am. But yeah, when I came to the US eventually, I saw a presentation. It was like, I think 101 reasons to go vegan. And at the time I was trying to not forget my German because I was living in Germany. So I was like, I guess the subtitle was in German. I was like, I'm going to practice my German and watch this, whatever it is. And it happened to be about veganism. And once I watched that, I had no excuse not to be vegan.
Very
Wow.
nice. Very nice.
Wow. Did you feel, you know, because I think a lot of times you know, when your friend said to you, you know, how could you say you care about animals but then still eat them? You know, I feel like a lot of times there's that cognitive dissonance that people have inside them where it's like, well, you know, and so how did you what led you to like get over that, so to speak, you know, and really understand that yeah, she was right. Yeah, what was that for you?
I really wish that someone came to me and grabbed me and said, like, wake up, and this is what you need to watch, and this is how you need to be thinking about this. But because it really didn't happen to me and all my friends said was that, it kind of really happened to me very organically. And this is like 10 years ago. It just didn't occur to me to go like look things up by myself. So it just, the question kind of nagged me until one day I was like, I love meat so much. I don't even see it in myself to go out and, you know, my friends have pizza and then I have to have like salads. That's very sad. I can't do that. Maybe I just start by not buying meat at home, which is where I started. But what really happened is that next time when I was out with my friends, I actually didn't have to get salad. I got falafel. And I remember one of my friends, you know, had some like chicken. He actually had chicken on a fork and basically brought it in front of my face. And he said, yeah, grab one. And I remember just having this very long pause as if like, you know, bad guy and good guy here,
Yeah.
just like fight. It was like I probably waited 10 seconds and then I just said, no thanks, I'm vegetarian. And there was immediately such a sense of pride that you know, I didn't let my values down. So that was pretty much the beginning of my journey when I had the courage to say no thanks. And so but when I talk to other people today, I think I can do that a lot more effectively than how it was done to me, to get them to see the cognitive dissonance. We recently just published one video on my channel. It's titled, I almost got killed, or I almost died trying to sell dog meat. So we were
Yeah,
basically
I saw that
selling
video
the-
actually.
I saw that
yeah.
too. Yeah.
We were basically trying to sell dog meat. It was satire, right? But this guy got so angry, he started yelling at us. But literally in 2 minutes, when we said, you know, this anger that you're feeling because you think it's dog meat, vegans feel about all animals. And
Mhm.
the moment he realized that this was a satire and understood the connection, the point we were trying to make, he was going vegan in literally 2 minutes.
Mhm.
So I think there are better ways to do it, and there are more effective ways
Mhm.
to see people see this cognitive dissonance, because
Yeah.
when we show the footage of factory farms and generally slaughterhouses, even when
Yeah.
they're from, you know, quote unquote humane farms,
Mhm.
nobody likes to see that. Everyone gets upset. Everyone realizes
Right.
it's messed up. So we just have to help people to see that as long as they are consuming meat, egg, dairy, they are a part of a thing that they themselves don't want to support.
Mhm.
So showing them that they want to be good people with their values, they say they care about animals, but with their
Mhm.
actions, they're causing what's happening to these animals.
Yeah.
And when you actually tell them this, they actually can align their actions and values and go vegan. And sometimes it's uncomfortable, but no one would change if they're not uncomfortable.
That's right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
if you're comfortable where you're at, why would you want to change?
that's
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
I love that. Love that. Actually, it's interesting. I didn't realize that we also had something else in common as well. Ich kann auch etwas Deutsch sprechen. Ich bin in Berlin geboren.
Oh, they're good.
Yeah. I didn't
Ich
realize that
wohnte
you
in
also.
Aachen.
Yeah. Ja, that's schön. Yeah. Ja, meine Eltern haben in Berlin Medizin studiert, die beide. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so
Nice.
Oh yeah,
I
your
didn't realize.
German is pretty good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and wow, a couple of things that I wanted to kind of just find out from you, because I know you've been working on you've talked a lot in some of your videos about the fact that there's enough nutrients and enough that we need in plant-based meals.
Mhm.
And can you speak to that? Because I know that one of the things that people talk about, and we know vitamin B is, is something that we need to make sure we focus on. But there are other nutrients as well that people always think that they can't get enough of, or they're not going to get protein or whatever. That way, it's always there's a reason why we want to go back to that animal, consumption. But if there's a way that we can let people understand they don't need to do this. There's enough in plant-based foods.
Yeah, I think nutrition in general is a big challenge. It shouldn't be, but I think the brainwashing by animal industries, is so deep that it works, right? So I think one of the best things for me is to generally ask people if they think it's possible to be vegan and healthy. And a lot of people generally say yes. So at first they may come to you saying that, oh, there is protein deficiency or whatever. You can simply ask, do you think it's possible? And they're like, yeah, I guess it's possible. So that means that a lot of times it's not really even, they already know that it's possible to be vegan, right?
Yeah.
So it's more like an excuse. They may not even be conscious about it. They just want to say something to avoid going vegan. Again, they don't do that consciously, but I can understand that they're just trying to come up with excuses. So just to say that some people already know it's possible. When it comes to food and nutrition in general, I think it's important to look at food as like a package of nutrients and things that are good and bad. So, and then appreciate that, yes, meat has protein. It's a good source of protein, but can you get your protein from other sources? And it's a package again. So yes, it may have proteins, but what else does it come with? So it comes with cholesterol, it comes with saturated fat, it comes with endotoxins. Endotoxins are toxins that are not neutralized by heating. So you can cook meat and dairy and egg as much as you want, but you can't get rid of endotoxins. Part of my work in pharmaceutical companies before was actually removing endotoxins. You can autoclave something, you can sterilize it, so it's sterile, but you can't get rid of endotoxins until you do certain processes that we don't do with food.
And what are those? What are endotoxins? If you, just for the people like me.
So endotoxins are residues of gram-negative bacteria. So they're not live bacteria. That's why you can actually kill the bacteria, but these particles remain and they're heat resistant. What happens is that as long as we eat them, we are fine. Our guts has tons of bacteria already, and that's fine. What really causes inflammation is when endotoxins find their way to our blood. And how do they do that? When there is no fiber, aka animal products, or when there is saturated fat. So saturated fat can basically dissolve endotoxins and pass them through to our bloodstream. And in our blood, our immune system doesn't really recognize if something is a live bacteria or dead bacteria. What it sees is endotoxins. Generally, we have evolved that if you have endotoxins around, it means like there is something wrong. So your body basically signals there is something wrong, there is infection. So you respond that way, despite the fact there is no live bacteria. It's basically like sending SWAT when there is a false alarm, right? So SWAT comes in, it destroys everything. Your immune system causes a lot of damage trying to fix a false alarm. But the way that you get this inflammation is by saturated fat and lack of fiber. And this is something that you can cook meat as much as you want. Heat is not gonna remove endotoxin until it's like really high temperatures, which we don't do that with food. In pharmaceutical business, we literally have to do sodium hydroxide, which is a very strong base, do hours of washing with really high strong acid or base to get rid of endotoxins. That's how sticky they are. So meat, egg, dairy, they all come with endotoxins, saturated fat, cholesterol, and and then yes, they come with iron, they come with B12, they come with proteins. So you have to look at it as a package and see if you can get all these nutrients elsewhere. So yes, meat has B12, but the B12 in meat, as a lot of people know, already comes from either supplementing cows directly with B12 or giving them the precursor for B12 or one of the metals that is necessary, which is cobalt. So they add cobalt to food. So if you have to give the supplement that way, then you may take that yourself, right? Or when you're talking about proteins, we know that all plants, every cell has all 20 amino acids. And soy is even complete protein. So it has all amino acids in the right ratios. And, if you really look at it, in most countries, people take more protein that they need. Hospitals are not full of people who are dying from lack of protein. They're full of people with cardiovascular diseases, cancer. And what gives you cancer? Broccoli? Show me how many papers are there that broccoli and pasta and rice gave somebody like heart attack. And it's generally animal products, right? So if you go, I challenge people, go find any cancer institute. They always say, eat less meat, eat less meat, eat less meat, or drop it completely. So it's not me, it's not like a vegan organization. It's like literally every cancer center. And at the end of the day, you can see that a lot of leading world health organizations, such as Kaiser, such as Mayo Clinic, MD Anderson, they all say that drop meat, reduce animal products, and many of them, including Mayo Clinic and Kaiser and other World Health Institutes, they say that whole food plant-based diet can be healthy for all stages of life, including infancy and pregnancy, and also for athletes. So if you know that, that's basically all we need to know. We can be healthy, we can be happy and healthy on a whole food plant-based diet. So if we can be, then what reason do we have to damage the environment, to hurt animals needlessly?
That's awesome.
I do want to kind of go back just a bit, because you said that soy was a complete protein. And I just, because, I've heard a lot about like complete protein, but I just want to kind of get more clarity on what that even means and sort of how you can maybe create that for yourself in your diet.
Yeah, and also in addition, what is it about soy? Because for example, we hear the term soy boy, for example, when people are using a derogatory term for vegans or something, what is it about it that, scientifically, has some problems when it comes to soy as well? So.
Yeah, sure. So complete protein is actually a very misleading term, which I absolutely dislike. Which is funny because even with that bad definition, soy is still complete protein. But complete protein kind of suggests that other plant sources are incomplete, which is not true. All plants have all 20 amino acids. So all the proteins that you make in your body are made from amino acids. The building blocks are amino acids. So any protein in your diet that you consume is going to be broken down to these 20 amino acids, and your body makes its own proteins, right, with these 20 amino acids. So as long as you supply your body with these amino acids, you should be able to make your own proteins. So half of these proteins, your body can, half of these amino acids, your body can actually make them from others. And the other half, you have to get them from your diet, which are the essential amino acids. So complete protein in the current definition means that the ratio that we need to take of each amino acid. So the reason that I think it's a bad definition is that because it has no real life application. The only way to be on a plant-based diet and not get enough of every single amino acid is if you eat just rice, like nothing else. Your diet is rice and nothing else. How many people do you know who eats like that?
Yeah, zero.
Probably,
not
yeah,
many.
exactly.
So so it's not even practical. It's like we came up with some like definition that does not apply to real life to just like evaluate the protein quality, and it disregards everything else. For instance, the higher content of methionine, which is one of the amino acids in meat, dairy, and egg, which correlates with cancer. It's one of the essential amino acids. It's needed, but you can actually see, for instance, in breast cancer cells, normal breast cells, you can actually grow them without methionine because they can actually recycle. But the breast cancer cells, you have to supply them with methionine to keep them alive. So there are a lot of studies showing that like cancer cells like thrive on methionine. It's literally called methionine-dependent cancer pathway. And a lot of pharmaceutical companies actually try to come up with methionine depletion. So you remove methionine from your diet to make sure that the cancer cells don't grow or actually decrease in size. So, that's one thing. It doesn't mean that methionine gives you cancer, just to be clear, but it can increase the risk, especially if someone is prone to cancer. Again, meat comes with no fiber, it comes with saturated fat and all these negative things. So if you can get the same protein from plant sources, why would you want to go with this package?
I see.
The way I look at it is like Coke has a lot of potassium, right?
Yeah.
But can we agree that Coke is not the best source for getting potassium, right? So
Right,
because you get sugar and a lot of other things. So, and then the other thing that I just add is the bioavailability of compounds that people always talk about, such as proteins or iron. And I just encourage everyone not to get too hung up on these definitions, because when you think about bioavailability of proteins, a lot of them are based on animal studies where they fed a pig uncooked beans versus like meat, and then they just like measured how much they absorb. It's like not even like translatable to humans. And even that, when you look clinically, there is no difference in muscle mass production between vegans and non-vegans. So bioavailability in meat and proteins is really not a concern. And even in other cases, when it is true that, for instance, the bioavailability of iron is actually higher in meat because of heme iron, But what they don't tell you is that when you cook meat, the heme iron actually precipitates. And what is left, for the most part, is non-heme iron in meat. And on the other hand, when you cook and when you soak beans, when you cook plants food, you actually make iron more available. You get rid of phytates and anti-nutrients. You actually make iron more available. You look at the data, you see that iron deficiency is number one nutrient deficiency in the world. You look at the meat eater population and you realize they only get 20% of their iron from meat, and the rest of it already comes from cereal and vegetables, right? So when you actually look at the big pictures, bioavailability is very misleading. So there's that. And then to answer your other question about soy boy, I think it is sad that there is a connection between like masculinity and eating meat. And I think that's just a deflection way, because they don't want to look at the scientific facts, because they know if they do, then they have to change the way they think. So the easiest thing is to just, say that, you're a soy boy, you're angry, or, vegans always talk about veganism, whatever. They just try to project their own insecurities on you. And, funny enough, what is strength? I think the strength is, think about any superhero or, movie. They don't go beat the shit out of like victims, right? They actually go to help helpless people. So if you use your strength to harm a defenseless animal, what is that? Is that being strong, or is that being bully, right? It's bullying. Totally. If you use your power to hurt others. Yeah. And anyone who's powerful, if you go to martial arts, which I've done several times, and like the first lesson is that the moment that you have the strength to hurt someone else, it's your responsibility to actually disengage. I remember clearly one of my martial art teachers was telling me that now that you're comfortable with this, the first thing you have to do is to run. Like the best thing that you can do in a fight is to run, even if you can fight back. And the second best thing you can do is to just disarm them, but not hurt them. So it's like always discouraging being violent and harming others. And that's the true strength. So yeah, it's easy just to disregard veganism by saying that, soy boy. But funny enough, I guess it's a weak referral to estrogen in soy, which is phytoestrogens. And it's funny when people say that, because that's a plant version of estrogen, versus they literally consume dairy with mammalian hormones. So you're drinking milk like like an actual baby, not even human baby, like a baby cow. You're drinking milk and breast milk, and then you're making fun of vegans for having a plant version of that hormone that does not only doesn't work that way, but in fact it has been shown that it reduces the risk of cancer, breast cancer, in women. So it's funny how it actually works completely the other way than they want. But it's sad that there is like a association between like masculinity and eating meat, and that's something that we really need to be talking about.
Yeah,
so true.
Thank you for that. That's really I mean, I love the scientific aspect of this, because it, I think that like understanding some of these like building blocks removes some of the, it removes some of the excuses that you could have, like, like you can't get enough protein, now you kind of know that you can, right? And like you said before, there's a lot of people who inherently kind of know that they probably could live a healthier life eating plant-based. They still have those hangups, and so removing those as much as possible, I think, is very, very key, because I mean, that's sort of, it's going to be a better lifestyle for them anyways, hopefully that's what we're doing with the show. But Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important for vegans to also be very educated and be able to defend their positions. Because not everyone is a nutrition expert. You don't need to be a nutrition expert to be vegan. All you have to realize is that hurting animals is wrong.
Yeah.
And hopefully you do some research to make sure that you do it in a healthy way. Because the dietary aspect of veganism is just like any other diet. You can do a good job or you can do a shitty job and get sick. It's not about veganism. It's about you just not doing a good job, right? So it's important for vegans to know that. And also, all I say is that for non-vegans, a lot of times they haven't actually done any research. They just heard something and they just repeat that, right? So they say, oh, veganism is expensive. Whereas like there is actual like Oxford study showing that it's actually 30% cheaper, but you can make it very tangible without giving people like a lot of data, you know, what are the cheapest and healthiest foods? You know, rice, beans, pasta, all that, legumes.
That's right.
Or when it comes to proteins, I can either give a 2-hour lecture about proteins, or I say, you know, do you think you need more proteins than like an elephant? Right? I mean, they either get it or they're going to say, oh, we have a different physiology. If they want to get there, then I go there with them, explain more. But I think intuitively, we should just be able to say that, you know, there are, or just look at our, you know, evolutionarily, other monkeys, other primates, they eat mainly fruits, nuts, and vegetables, right? So that's where they get like gorillas. Do you need more body mass than like a gorilla? So it's just laughable when you actually look at it that way. But so I just want to say that some people don't really look into it. They just have heard something and they just want to repeat that. And when you explain it to them, if they're open-minded, they should be able to make the connection.
That's awesome. That's so great. Thank you so much. You know, I also know that you are involved. You've done some consulting for cultured meat. And I saw another video that was talking about some of the difficulties in getting the stem cell from animals to be able to do the cultured meat. And I forget the name of the video or the name of the actual scientist that was talking about this. Something about you may be familiar with. I'm sure you're probably familiar with some of the contrary information about this. But he was saying that it requires a lot of energy, and that you'd have to repeat going back to get the stem cells over and over and over again. So I'm not quite sure. Can you enlighten us about this and let us know how you're involved in consulting you know, for cultured meat, and how this controversy, you know, may not actually pan out as it appears?
Yeah, so I think the terminology for it is cultivated meat, or some people may have heard lab grown. We just don't use that because it suggests that it comes from labs, whereas it really doesn't. I mean, in a way, any food at some point was tested in a lab to approve its safety. So it would not be by any means practical for cultivated meat if every time that you wanted to grow a batch of food or meat, if you wanted to go back to the first animal, for many reasons, because it's not just going and grabbing some cells from an animal and growing them. You have to make sure that the cells are suitable, they grow in certain, so you have to characterize a lot of parameters about these cells to make sure that they're good. So you can't be doing that by going back to the animals. It's not going to be feasible. So the way it works in pharmaceutical companies, for instance, is that you establish something called working cell bank and master cell bank. So when you isolate the cell that you think it works and you characterize them, you actually expand that. And then you freeze those cells. You freeze them in liquid nitrogen often, so it's going to be cell banks. So every time that you need a new batch, you just go to the cell bank and thaw a vial and then start your batch from there. And the reason that you do this cell banking is because every cell is going to be different from the other when you isolate them first. So during cell banking, you make sure that all these cells are genetically identical. None of them is going to have some weird mutation. None of them is going to, all these cells grow with the same rate. They all have, they're like as identical as it's possible.
Hmm.
So because of that, it would not make any sense to go back to the original animal to grow lab-grown meat or cultivated meat. Yeah.
Wow,
So
that's
yeah, I just have a quick question about like the 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 cells that come from the animals, right? How, like, what's the process in getting the cells, and then how many do you need in order for it to be like viable to actually be able to do this process, and and um and then also like to have it keep growing outside, because I mean I would assume that the end goal would be that you wouldn't need any animals to be a part of the process at a certain point. So do you mind just walking us through that entire process?
Yeah, generally the sample can come from either a biopsy with anesthetics, or even possibly coming from an egg or even a tip of a feather. So none of these are ideal. And as someone who's vegan and ethical vegan, I think I don't like that part that there is still animal involvement. And I sympathize with people who have issues with this step.
Yeah.
So it's not an ideal situation, but is much, 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 much better than anything else that we are doing right now to animals. But I can say that a lot of it can come without even hurting the animal in any significant way.
Yeah.
Certainly not, doesn't require killing an animal. And then as the field progresses, we are going to be immediately like dissociated from that part. Hopefully, I mean, I get that there might be R&D going on at all time, but the production will be completely separated from that initial cell isolations. So when you isolate cells, which is a very typical thing that we do that even with humans. We isolate tumors, cancer tumors, and we separate cells, establish cell lines. Same thing here. So you isolate cells, you remove the tissues and stuff that you don't want, and you basically isolate the cells you're interested in. And the next step is basically developing your cell line. So it's like cell line development. From here onward, there is no animal involvement. The only thing is sometimes using the serum. So I guess let me back up a little bit. So when you grow cells in our body, we have blood, right? The blood carries oxygen, carries nutrients. So in the lab, we kind of have to come up with the same blood to supply cells with nutrients and remove the metabolites that are toxic, etc. So we use something called media. It's basically just like, you can think about it as like artificial blood. The media should have like sugars, vitamins, minerals, pretty much CO2, or like a buffering system, everything that cells just need. The only tricky part is cells also require growth factors, and typically right now the way it works is you add something called FPS, or fetal bovine serum, which is really cruel, and that's what's used in all biomedical sciences and all cancer research. It's terrible. You have to have a pregnant cow, you have to remove their fetus, you have to cut them open alive, typically remove their heart and just like take it from it. Yeah. Every time I describe this, I sound like I'm exaggerating, and but there is no nice way to even describe it. It's terrible. So it's typically being used for pharmaceutical research and biomedical research. It's very unfortunate. So FPS a lot of times is added during early stages, but a lot of companies are coming up with alternatives to FPS. So they're not going to be using FPS. The first products that are going to be available in the US, unfortunately, will have something similar to FPS. It's going to be coming from adult cows. So that's a lot better than FPS, but it's still far from ideal. But all these companies are going to be completely remove any kind of serum or animal products from their processes. So that's the goal. It's only a matter of time when we get there. So anyways, now we have this media. You basically grow your cells in this media. A lot of companies and startups already have come up with media that are completely basically chemically defined. So there is no added serum. So you can use algae, you can use different things, or produce these growth factors using other biotechnological methods that are animal-free. And then basically from that, you have like a processor, like you can think about it as like a brewery, pretty much. So you're going to have an incubator where cells sit down with media, they grow, they differentiate to different types of tissue, and from there you harvest the cells and you produce cultivated meat. So pretty much the only place that you have connection with animals is either the first step, which the moment that you establish your cell line is going to be completely separated from that. And then the other thing is the serum, which it's not even going to be practical for companies to use serum in large scale. So that's going to be only a matter of time until we get rid of serum as well.
Yeah. You're muted.
No, what I was going to say, thank you so much for that answer. You know, in fact, it's true. In this video that I was talking about, he was talking about the FBS. Although because I had heard you talk about that stem cell removal to be able to just begin that process, and I was also thinking, I wonder what Dr. Harsini would say about that. And now I understand with the FBS, clearly that is what is working for the most part now. But is this simply because we don't have these chemical combination clearly defined enough to be able to get away from FBS? And what would be the difference between a clearly defined chemical composition that can do this growth media compared to FBS, for example?
That's a very good question, seriously. And I think it's worth mentioning that thanks to cultivated meat, now we are having well-defined FBS alternatives that can be also used in pharmaceutical company to remove FBS, hopefully, because it's not just about cultivated meat. Pharmaceutical companies and biomedical research requires a lot of FBS all the time. And the way things work in science, once some process is established with something, no one really wants to come up with a better way to do it, just because then they have to deviate from what has already been established. But using FBS is very problematic also for medical research because the composition changes from cow to cow. Literally, it depends on the cow's diet. It even depends on like where the cows are, like the geography of where the cows come from, in fact, influences the composition of FBS. And the other problem is we don't even know what's in it completely. So we know the major compounds, but there are other things in it that we just don't know what they are. The protocols to use FBS are just different from lab to lab. Some labs have to heat inactivate some compounds, some enzymes, some other filter that. And then you look at like cancer research in different labs and you wonder why they're not reproducible. And that's just because they're adding a compound to their cancer cells without even knowing what they're adding to. And it changes from batch to batch. So that's very bad science.
Yeah.
So thanks to cultivated meat, now we're coming up with a lot of alternatives that can do the same thing without being problematic. And then hopefully pharmaceutical companies can pick up because it's going to be the same application, the same function, hopefully a lot cheaper. It must be cheaper to be feasible for cultivated meat. And the main barrier right now is we do have alternatives, but the main barrier is to make it scalable and cheap. so that pharmaceutical companies and cultivated meat companies can use it. So yes, it is sad that the very first product that is going to come to market by the end of this year is going to have adult bovine serum, which again is a lot better than FBS. That part is still sad, but I guess on the bright side, we know that they're going to remove that very soon. And also thanks to this whole process, now we're going to have better alternatives that can remove FBS from the entire biomedical business. So that's a huge success for the entire field and for biomedical research as well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's also fascinating to me because, I mean, on the one hand, I get it because I mean, I think all of us have eaten meat before we became vegan, and you know, if memory serves me well, it was so delicious, so amazing. So I understand the attachment that we have to eating, consuming meat. I get that completely, but I'm just wondering with the cultured meat, because clearly we're serving. That would serve, or at least it seems to be serving the purpose of people's taste more than just merely being vegan, for example, you know, because and what are your thoughts about how that is in terms of you know, the intention behind it? You know, what is the actual true purpose? What is it serving?
Yeah, again, a good question. I think alternative proteins as a whole is going to be a catalyzer or catalyst for the industry, for people to make better choices, but it's not the ideal goal for animal liberation for me, right? So eventually for us to leave animals alone and not exploit them for experimentation, for entertainment, for fashion, for food, we need to morally advance as a society. And it's not just about replacing, you know, red meat with, you know, cultivated meat. That moral advancement doesn't come with alternative proteins. However, for as far as animals are concerned and how many of them are being like abused and exploited in dairy and meat and egg industries, this would, first of all, spare a lot of animals. And it's not an animal welfare. It's not just going to make animals, you know, give them an extra inch of space. It's going to actually say, you know, reduce the number of animals that are being killed significantly. And hopefully after that, the other side becomes so expensive that it just dies by itself. No one knows really what's going to happen, but we know that it's going to be a catalyst to that end goal. So there's that. And also, I think there's even research showing that when people consume animal products, they lose their sympathy more than when they don't. So if you give somebody meat or egg and dairy and then ask them, what do you think about sentience in animals, or how morally, how much morally do you value an animal's life, they would actually score it less compared to when you already prime them with plant-based food, right? So the moment they already eat animal products, they would want to justify hurting animals more. And that's really the primary reason that most people do that, despite the fact that they say they're against animal abuse. Everyone is against animal abuse until it comes about it comes down to food, and they find any reason to justify that, and that's just because they're already doing it and they don't want to change. So now with cultivated meat or alternative proteins, if you give them another option where they're not already participating in killing animals, it becomes a lot easier for them to change and morally advance. So my goal is for our societies to morally advance and not just give them another option to eat. It's not about what you eat, it's about how we think about animals as other members of our society that deserve our protection and compassion, instead of exploiting them, objectifying them, and looking at them as means to make profit off of.
Awesome.
Yeah, I really,
I know time is slipping because you're probably watching on time,
Yeah.
Do you have any question regarding this? Because I wanted to ask about your musical
I
talents.
still do
Yeah,
have some stuff on this
yeah.
one. I find it interesting because you know, I recently been started watching more documentaries. You know, I've been vegan for 6 years, but I think that, you know, even being vegan, uh you can start to kind of disassociate with like animals in a way, because like the people that you're around, they um those people don't necessarily care about animals in a way, right? I mean, they maybe they do, but they're still eating meat. And so um and you start to, you know, you you love the people that you're, you know, that you're with, your friends, your family. And I think so, on some level it makes you a bit empathetic to like their struggles with, you know, feeling bad about, you know, having this like, you know, cognitive dissonance or whatever it is, you know. So um and so recently I've been, you know, watching documentaries, and it's sort of reaffirmed like some of the reasons why I'm still vegan, you know. Like I started becoming vegan because of the health aspect of it. Then I stayed after a couple years because I was like, you know what, I actually do care about these animals. Like, you know, I don't want them to be hurt. I don't want them to be, you know, their necks, you know, cut open and upside down bleeding out. And so and I think that like sometimes like, so I just watched these documentaries again recently, and it recharged me. And in not like it made me like more angry, right? So I was talking with a friend of mine, and you know, I was like, it was just after I watched this video, and he, you know, this person was vegan before, then you know he went back to eating meat, and he did it for health reasons, you know, similar to me, um, and uh, and he never really cared about it, and I think like the animals, I think. And so well, I guess what I'm getting at is that, you know, when I was talking to him about it, I was like, yeah, you know, I just saw this movie. It's very bad. You know, I was like, yeah, factory farming is crazy, man. It's really bad, you know. That's why I always try to like find the sustainable farms, you know, where they treat everyone, all of them nice. And I just was like, yeah, but at the end they all die at the end. They don't want to. And so, you know, for people who are like that, like what is your sort of approach? And you know, you were talking about how you know, having the cultured meat is uh helps people to not be a part of it and still sort of have that the thing that they were having before, but they're not involved in like the killing and or they're not contributing to the violence and hurting animals. And so, you know, there's a question in here somewhere, but um yeah, but like how would you sort of handle a person like my friend who has these sort of objections?
Yeah, I think part of it is us when we are talking about animal liberation. We often say we oppose animal agriculture or factory farming. And that's something that I think we should be careful, because our problem is not factory farming and animal agriculture. It's animal exploitation, it's animal
Mhm.
consumption, is using and abusing animals for our pleasure or profit.
Right.
Um, so I think that's a vocabulary that we have to adopt and say that, instead of just painting animal agriculture as the final problem. And for those who actually don't care about animals, even if we care about pandemics, antibiotic resistance, zoonotic diseases, climate, or whatever, like health, going from factory farming to local farming is not going to solve any of these issues.
Right.
Right now, there is a bird pandemic going on, influenza. If you go to CDC website for current bird flu that has killed 60 million birds in the US alone, you actually see that it says factory farm and backyard local farms. So they still contribute to pandemics and all that. But for us, when we talk to people, I think it really helps, because I ask people, why do you want them to be treated humanely? And the answer is there. So if you morally value animals, so that's a reason, right? Why do you not like factory farms? You like local farms, because you already know that animals morally, they have moral value, and you don't want them to suffer. So the next question becomes, if you don't want them to suffer, wouldn't the best idea be just not kill them at all, rather than just having them killed in the local backyard farm, whatever that means? A lot of times also, what's really helpful is when I ask people define humane. So if you go look up the word humane in dictionary, it means act of compassion and kindness. And I can give someone an example of like what it is to kill somebody humanely. It is possible to kill someone humanely, but that depends on your intention. We do that all the time when it comes to our companion animals. When they're sick and really old and they're suffering, we take them to vet, we pay out of pocket, we are sad, we cry, we hug them. We put them down because we are trying to reduce their suffering. Despite the fact that it upsets us, we do that for them, and that's an act of compassion. So that's an example of humanely killing an animal. But when we kill animals, healthy animals who want to live just because we like the taste of their flesh under our tongue, that is everything but humane. That's pure selfish. So by definition, that just cannot be humane. That's not an act of compassion. We're doing that because we just like the taste, or for convenience. And none of those is a good reason to kill a healthy animal who wants to live. So a lot of times when I explain this, people can understand. And the fact that removing pain from the scenario does not make an act that is morally wrong suddenly right. An example of that is if scenario A, I basically torture a dog or a person and then kill them. Scenario B, I drug them first so they don't suffer, and then I kill the person or the dog. So obviously the latter is better because they didn't suffer, but it's not right. It's still wrong. So if I went to court and I said, Your Honor, I killed them without pain, they're not going to say, well, in that case, Mr. Harsini, you're good to go. It's ridiculous, right? So we already recognize even drugging a dog and then killing them needlessly is wrong. So we only do that when it comes to animals. We just want to find the right way to do something that is inherently wrong. So when you try to give people these examples, they can suddenly understand, yeah, I guess I never really thought about it that way.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay. I know my dad wants to get into the music stuff. So
no, I just no, truly, I mean, I just think it's just wonderful what you've done. I know that I believe it was in Iran where you have a group of friends that you are all clowns going to hospitals and actually working with kids and playing for them. And because I think you can actually be even successful just being a musician yourself if that's really what you wanted to do, because I know you've also done accompaniment. There's accompaniment from with that you accompany some singer as well. So I know you can even do that as well, but I was wondering, why did you choose to make your talent more a vehicle to spread veganism? Because that's kind of what it seems that you've done. Like you always connect your talent to making sure that you're spreading that, the vegan lifestyle.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I actually used to work as church organist. I'm not religious, but I used to still play organ, bagpipes, and piano in like churches and in other groups. I work as a piano teacher and tuner as well. But I guess I always had a burning fire inside me that, like, what is it that you're doing with your life, and are you doing the most impactful thing with your life? So that was always the question that was in the back of my mind, and that was the motivation behind any decision that I ever made in my life. Going from chemical engineering to doing biomedical research was based on that, because it was like, I want to do something more. I want to help people. And, I was like, how can I use my music in a more meaningful way? So I did clinic clowning. I went to hospitals. And that was a start for me to do biomedical research, cancer research. But at some point, I realized every single disease I ever worked on comes back to animal consumption or exploitation in one way or another, whether it was pandemics. I studied influenza after my doctorate. I studied COVID, inflammatory diseases, cancer, cardiovascular disease. Everything I ever studied comes back to animal consumption. And as a biomedical scientist, also, if you walk around, grab a biomedical scientist and say, hey, what's the most urgent topic in biomedical sciences? They would tell you antibiotic resistance. Because once we have a pandemic that is antibiotic resistance, that's going to be the end of modern medicine. There is nothing we can do. We don't have a plan B. Where does that come from? Again, one of the main sources is animal consumption, because 70 to 80% of antibiotics worldwide and in the US are fed to animals. And they're medically relevant antibiotics. So even if I just didn't care about animals and just care about human animals, you could already argue that the best thing I could do with my life is promoting veganism or plant-based diet. But also, as someone who is rational and logical, I always think about what is the most amount of suffering in the world and which one is the most neglected. And the combination of these two is basically what we do to animals, because it's the most normalized form of cruelty. Other issues, as you know, I'm gay. There are other causes that I care about. But if you go on the street and, homophobia still exists, racism still exists, but we have come a long way from like slavery in 200 years ago, right? Today, if you go on the street and just like ask anyone, Republican or Democrat, like if you say, do you think a black person and a white person can suffer the same? I don't think anyone denies that. Disagreements a lot of times come about, political ways to deal with political issues, but no one really says that a black person can't feel pain. But here, when you talk about animals, people say plants though, like what about like lettuce? Like I was like, are you kidding? Are you literally comparing a lettuce with like another mammal? Yeah. So that's how ignorant we are to animals. So that's the ignorance, and the number of animals and the way that we treat them is so bad that there is nothing else I can do with my life that has that much of an impact. That's why rationally, statistically, logically, I always say, show me something that is more impactful. I will quit what I do today. I will go do that. But there is none. It impacts literally every single life on our planet. And when I die, I want to be able to look back and I say, I did something meaningful with my life. I'm not going to be worried about, I'm not going to miss that, I don't know, music gig that I didn't do. Maybe somebody would, but I wouldn't. I would miss that person who had a chance to go vegan, to dedicate their careers to veganism. And if I know that I had that chance and I missed that, that's when I can't forgive myself. And that's the whole idea of me starting my nonprofit, Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, because I want to bring all this education and awareness to universities. And just like you said your restaurant has 3 pillars, education, community, and food. We do the same thing with universities. We want to make dining halls go plant-based to make veganism more accessible. We want to do education, whether it's plant-based nutrition education, whether it's basically helping vegans find their voice, learn how to speak, and feel empowered, and hopefully choose careers that long-term change the system. and also doing a lot of outreach, because I know that there are tons of people who are already vegan or they have the potential to go vegan. And we just never reach out to them. So with my nonprofit ASAP, we are trying to be on every single campus and bring all this education and awareness in a very systematic manner in every university.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I really like that actually. I'm glad you brought that up. What was the inception? Like, who were the major players? Like, how did you bring this this nonprofit together?
Well, I've been doing animal advocacy for 10 years, and
Yeah.
I was just very frustrated because I saw that how much potential there is in universities, but there is no coherent, sustainable movement in universities. We basically depend on a couple of 18, 19, 20-year-olds who just became vegan. They don't have the resources. And here they are. And then the other hand, we have meat, egg, dairy industries who have like so much money, so many experts. So I put together a team of experts, and we are bringing all this expertise and support to students so they can be effective. And I also ran my own animal rights club throughout my master's and doctorate, and I graduated, it died, and it keeps happening in every single school, and that's why it's not sustainable. That's why it sucks, and that's why it's failing, right? So I really wanted to put together a team to fix this big problem and harvest. Every time I talk at universities, people come to me, they say, I'm motivated, I'm inspired, I want to do something. Knowing that how many of these people exist and I just don't have the capacity to reach out to them, that's the biggest frustration.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, I need to make this systematic, I need to make ASAP, and basically be in every single university.
Yeah, that's great.
That's awesome.
But we want to support this cause. Definitely please check my website, alliedscholars.org, and help this mission.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I watch a lot of, YouTube videos, and I think that a lot of times when I see, I like to debate things, where like people on the street, like talking, and I feel like a lot of times, like, you have people who are, pro eating animal products, and it almost feels like they just, like, the people who are on the vegan side of it, they just don't, like, the arguments just make them sound bad. And then so it, like, whether, I mean, what they're saying and what their intention is, like, good, but like they just don't have enough information to, like, make a strong argument. And so what ends up happening is that the other side feels like, well, I just destroyed this vegan, like. And so, yeah, I think that having that information where people can actually learn how to speak and understand what the science is behind everything, understand the studies, is very important, because, I mean, yeah. So that's sort of, yeah.
I just want to add something to that. That in order to be an effective outreacher and vegan, you don't really need to be a scientist, and you don't need to be expert in every subject. I'm not an expert in every subject. Nobody is, right? So I would say that in order to be an effective outreacher, sticking to ethics always is the easiest way, because everyone deep down, or most people deep down, have that compassion for animals. Let's be honest, unless someone is an actual psycho, everyone understands that hurting animals needlessly is wrong. So the fact that they can't see that, it just means that that's that cognitive dissonance that we have to help them get over. So with that being said, I think a lot of people can actually, they don't have to feel like they have to know all the statistics and verbally leaflet. In fact, if you just verbally leaflet people and tell people like a bunch of numbers, do you think it really makes a difference if I say 1 billion animals die every year, or 1 trillion animals? Do you think 3 zeros in front of one can make a difference for someone, right? It doesn't. these numbers are so massive and they don't make an emotional connection with people. And as long as it's an emotional connection deep inside, no one really wants to change. No one changes because they heard this statistic somewhere, right? They have to see if they believe in climate, they have to see the footage of what it means for climate change to impact communities, to impact animals, right? It's not playing with their emotions, but just showing that how these actions end up hurting animals and people or whatever. So because of that, trying to use what people already believe and the emotions they already have and apply that to other animals, it's one of the most effective ways to do it. And that does not require verbally leafleting things. That's not to say that vegans shouldn't educate themselves about how to approach all these topics, but let's be honest. 99% of arguments against veganism are just like 12, I don't know, 15 of them, and everyone just repeats those, right?
Yeah.
As long as you just learn how to respond to these arguments without actually going to details, you can become a very effective outreacher. And that's exactly what I want to encourage people to do. To go learn how to become an outreacher. A good place to start is Anonymous for the Voiceless, or groups like that. So watch those videos, see how they respond. They have training workshops.
Yeah.
It's not rocket science. I'm an introvert. English is not even my first language. If I can do it, you can do it too, right?
Yeah.
You just learn how to do it and you become good at it. But the most important thing at the end of the day is just to speak up, to not be silent, not to be silent, to do something, to say something, because at the end of the day, in the face of injustice, silence is not an option. So I just encourage people to find that courage to speak up.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. That's really great. I know we're running out of time here. And so we just have our final questions. And I feel like you just answered like three of them, all three of them, but I'm going to ask him anyways. He said, so the first one is, so what advice would you give to people, who, either starting their journey or, are on the fence about it, or, in order to become vegan?
So for people who are thinking about going vegan, I think two of the most helpful questions to ask themselves is, a lot of times it might be difficult to go vegan, and it might very well be. It might be more difficult for you to be vegan than me, vice versa. So we acknowledge that it's not as easy for everyone, depending on where you live, your family, grocery stores near you, etc. But a good perspective to help is it harder for you to be vegan, or is it harder for animals to go through what they go through, right? So watch Dominion, watch Earthlings, and watch these documentaries and educate yourself on what happens to animals, and ask yourself this: is it harder for a chicken to be abused, for a male chicken to get ground up alive? For egg industry, is it harder for you to be vegan, or is it harder for a female cow to be sexually violated multiple times in their lives, have their babies taken away, and eventually at the end of the day get killed? Is it harder for her, or is it harder for you to just choose something else on the menu, or just do some planning on your diet to avoid that, right? So it becomes really clear. And the second is, if you are thinking about going vegan and you're just like, should I do it tonight? Should I do it? All I say is that one of our greatest qualities as humans, as a species, is our sense of empathy, which is being able to put ourselves in other people or other animals' situation and try to understand the experience they're having from their perspective. If I step on a dog's foot, they yelp, I feel bad, just because it doesn't mean that I think a dog is equal to a human. It's just like I can put myself in their place and see how they're feeling and experiencing this pain. So our sense of empathy is one of the greatest and most precious senses that we have. So use it. Put yourself in place of animals and ask yourself, if someone was abusing you, if someone was exploiting you, or even your companion animal, if I grabbed your companion animal and did what we're doing to farm animals to them, what would you do? How urgently would you want that to stop? People literally, quit their jobs, take a day off, spend thousands of dollars just to make sure their companion animal is like not suffering, right? So have that sense of urgency. If you want that abuse and exploitation to stop urgently, know that you have that power to make that impact urgently. Think about your next meal. You don't have to think about how you're going to be vegan for the rest of your life. Just do it. Going vegan is very easy. It's the fear of taking a new thing in our lives that is always scary. Like if you want to start going to the gym, it feels like scary. You do it for 2 weeks, it becomes a new norm.
Yeah.
For all of us, being vegan is the norm, right? We don't wake up, we are like, another day I have to figure out how to be vegan. It's just like
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's great. That's really good. The second question is, what are you working on at the moment?
My biggest project is basically establishing ASAP chapters in top 100 universities in the US. So I want students to go to any university and be able to say that there is an active student organization that does outreach, that does education and empowerment, and helps students to have impactful careers. So what this does is that it guarantees that in a couple of years from now, these students will be in charge, will be the future leaders that can change the system. So that's very impactful, and that's where I see that there is no one else doing that, and that's my passion. And I think it's one of the biggest ways to help our movement. So I wake up for that every day.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. So cool.
And the very last question is, where can people find you?
If you Google my name, you should get a bunch of stuff that comes up. But basically, Twitter would be where I write a lot. Which is Dr. Faraz Harsini. My YouTube, I'll be sharing a lot more of our educational materials, both on healthy plant-based diet and also effective ways to do outreach for those who are interested. So my YouTube is also Dr. Faraz Harsini. And if you go to our website, which is alliedscholars.org, you can actually also contact me through the website if you have any questions. But I want to say that if you're a student, you're watching this, if you want to do any kind of activism in your university, and if you really want to go vegan and you really need a lot of help, and I can be that help for you, don't hesitate to contact me, because there is no better decision that you can make in your life. And if I can get the opportunity to be a part of that, I want to be. So
awesome.
That's awesome. That's really great. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a real pleasure. And
absolutely.
Yeah, just I mean, so much information. It's amazing. I really love it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank
it
you
was
so
a pleasure.
much. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Okay, so we just had Dr. Faraz Harsini on. Great interview. That was really good.
Yeah.
A lot. There's a lot of, I think, I mentioned a little bit in the podcast, but like, I think having some of this like technical knowledge, for me anyways, really helps to sort of understand like, like what is happening in our bodies, like having an understanding of the amino acids and then how we create the proteins in and within our bodies. I think that's very, very helpful, because I think that, there's just so much misinformation, just everywhere, and people have, like the talking points and like, oh, well, what about this? And what about that? And you're like, well, yes. So having like good answers for all those things, I think are very helpful. And he just had tons of them, so it's just really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I also like the way that, he really tries to get, the emotional way that we kind of are as human beings, and then bring that with logic, so that we can see where there's any dissonance in our cognition, so that we can then kind of reconcile that and then really do the right thing. He really had a good way of being able to describe that, and I mean, clearly he's done this a lot of times, and he's probably been asked so many times, for that. And so it's really good. And wow, like I say, I mean, I think I'm one of the most blessed older folk that gets to be around you young folks, as you do, and I'm like, I'm in it. I'm loving it. To be part of a change, I really love that. Yeah, so I'm really happy for what you guys are doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're also doing it too, so that's good.
Great. Well,
all right, well, that was
this is
another
great.
episode.
Absolutely, yeah. And I hope we have him come back again.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
gonna happen.
Well, thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Green Carpet Interviews. We hope you found it informative and inspiring.
This show was brought to you by Veg on the Edge, our vegan restaurant in Santa Cruz and San Luis Obispo. If you're in the area, be sure to stop by and check out our delicious plant-based dishes. Check out vegontheedge.com for more information.
To stay connected with us and learn more about conscious living, follow us on Instagram at Green Carpet Interviews. We love hearing from our listeners and would love to hear your thoughts and feedback.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Green Carpet Interviews.